Good night. I'm going to be presenting my informative speech and I'm going to be talking about Siddhartha Gautama, known as the Buddha. Siddhartha was born the son of a prince of a Sakaya tribe in what is today Nepal, in the lowest Himalaya mountain. The story is about his mother named the Queen Maya, who had a dream about a beautiful white elephant who offered the queen a flower and then entered the side of her body. When the sages were asked to interpret the dream, they predicted that the queen will give birth to a son that will become either a great ruler or a great holy man. 10 months later, Siddhartha Gautama was born and the queen died. Siddhartha's father, wanting his son to succeed, took measures to keep the boy from exposure to suffering. Siddhartha grew up in luxury, married at early age a young woman his father had chosen, and he also had a son. He had everything he wanted. He was educated and trained as a warrior because one day he was supposed to take after his father's role. Still shielded from pain and suffering, Siddhartha indulged in a life of pure pleasure for 29 years. Siddhartha disobeyed his father's command not to leave the royal grounds. Visiting a nearby town, he soon discovered the suffering of ordinary life. On his first trip outside, he saw an old man. On his second trip outside, he saw a sick man. On his third trip outside, he saw a corpse that was taken for cremation. And he recognized the world that he had been protected from seeing. On his fourth and last trip outside, he saw a spiritual seeker. Someone who has decided to live another life completely different from his life to escape from impermanent suffering and death. He had this traumatic encounter with the pain and suffering of life. He was shocked and he wanted to know all the answers to his questions. Siddhartha was determined to comprehend the nature of suffering and he resolved to leave the palace. He climbed down to the palace courtyard. Siddhartha gave his horse to his servant. He cut off his long black hair. He took out all his jewelry. He changed his clothes. And he put on simple clothes and he went out into the world with nothing but questions. This was known as the Great Going Forth. Once a great prince, and then Siddhartha became a seeker, surviving of the charity of the persons. He was begging for food, he didn't have anything to eat, and traveling from teacher to teacher, he learned techniques of meditation and discussed philosophy, but he was still unsatisfied. He also discovered that his teachers agreed on some issues but not on others. Siddhartha also practiced the great austerity. The great austerity is living with little food, drink, and with not sleep as possible. He hoped that he would find and gain spiritual powers, but that was not true. He was really sick because he was not eating or drinking, and he was found almost dead nearby a tree by a woman who gave him food. Being a practical person, Siddhartha decided to adopt a path of meditation, middle way between self-indulgence and asceticism. He went to another tree called the Bodhi tree and sat facing east, resolving to find all his answers to his questions. That's the Bodhi tree and that's Siddhartha Gautama. At last, he reached a state of profound understanding. He reached a state of understanding called his awakening or enlightenment. He saw suffering, aging, and death in a new way, recognizing them as a path of life, but also seeing the possibility of release. Whatever the cause of his enlightenment, Siddhartha arose and said that he was a new person because he had waken up. From this came the new name, the Buddha. The Buddha spent the rest of his long life traveling to village in northeast India, teaching his insights and his new way of life. At last, the Buddha traveled west. He explained his awakening to his 5 former companions, and they became his first disciples. The Buddha spent the rest of his long life traveling, with no alcohol, moderate eating, walking, regular meditation, and pure air. The 4 noble truths known by the Buddha are: to live is to suffer, the second one. Suffering comes from desire, the third one. To end suffering, you must end desire. And the fourth one and last one. Release from suffering is possible and can be attained by following the Noble Eightfold Path. When he was 80 years old, the legend says, the Buddha ate food offered by a well-meaning blacksmith named Chunda, but the food was spoiled and the Buddha became terribly sick and he died. He died giving everyone important lessons about life, enriching and knowing all the concerns he needed to know about suffering and death. My conclusion, Buddhism offers hope and access to a spiritual understanding and satisfaction to ordinary people. Everyone can achieve nirvana. Nirvana is a state of joy and peace, and although reaching nirvana occurs rarely, it is possible to obtain during one's lifetime. Living with moderation and without harming others will bring us peace. The information from some of the information is taken from the book Experiencing the World's Religion by Michael Molloy, 5th edition, and also the movie called The Buddha, director David Gruen, and you can find it in Netflix 2010. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. My name was Gabriela Mora and I was talking about Siddhartha Gautama, known as the Buddha. Here's my audience.